So you've been thinking about moving to Wake Forest, North Carolina, and wondering what this suburb of Raleigh is all about, and if it's going to meet your lifestyle, what you may be able to afford. But I bet you're also interested in what the pros and cons are of Wake Forest before diving all in. My name is Pete, and I'm a local realtor who has lived in the area for nearly 20 years. And I work with people just like you every single day. So whether you're moving in 9 days or in 9 months, you should give me a call, text, email, or set up a Zoom. Check out my contact information in the description below, and we can talk about what a smooth transition to the area might look like for you. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap the bell below. That way you can be in the know about all things Raleigh and Wake Forest. Now, before we dive in, I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page with where Wake Forest is actually located and what maybe some of the boundaries are. So let's take a look. All right, so we're looking at a Google map of Wake Forest. Pretty simple. You may know that the red on the outside of Wake Forest or any town is really just the municipality of that area. So this is where the city of Raleigh has jurisdiction, and that's what pops up in Google Map. So what you may not know is all of the other areas that might be encompassed that have a Wake Forest address and use, schools at Wake Forest and center their lives more on Wake Forest. So we're going to identify that and a few of the roads in and out of Wake Forest. So I'll circle Wake Forest just so we're all on the same page. And then if we take a look down here, North Raleigh is down here, right? And North Raleigh. And just to the north of Wake Forest is the little town of Youngsville, and a little bit further north than that is Franklinton. So we see over here to the east is Rolesville, and let's kind of outline some of the areas that are included into Wake Forest. So if we kind of highlight, this is generally a good area for the northern part of Wake Forest. But what you may not know is Wake Forest kind of cuts over here into this new light area, and these are all primarily Wake Forest addresses. So Wake Forest kind of cuts down to the south along US 1, back over here towards Rolesville, and juts out here towards 98. It may not be exact, but it's pretty darn close. So something else to point out is, and I'll change this back to green, this area right here is Wakefield. Wakefield really isn't a town, it's more of a large development. There is shopping there, so there's grocery stores like Harris Teeter's and some casual dining restaurants and car washes and all the things that you would need to kind of live around here in Wakefield. Most of the people who live in this Wakefield area, their lives are kind of centered around Wake Forest as well. The further down towards North Raleigh you get, this is your boundary for Wake Forest, just to give you an idea. A couple of roads to pay attention to are 98. So 98 cuts right through Wake Forest. 98 will take you all the way to Durham if you want to go to Durham. It's a 2-lane county road. Traffic moves pretty well unless there's an accident. So not a lot of stoplights, just a couple. So it moves pretty well. Then we've got US 1. US 1 cuts through here. US 1 is the main route in and out of Wake Forest. It is heavily trafficked. It is a very busy road. There are a number of stoplights on it. Traffic generally moves fairly well unless there's accidents. And then we've got 401. So a lot of people, a little squiggly there. We'll take 401 down towards 540. So 540 is the outer belt line. So this outer belt line is what most of these are trafficking to, so that you can get over to Research Triangle Park or down into Raleigh or over towards the airport, things like that. So just make sure we're on the same page. Now let's dive in to the pros. The number one pro for Wake Forest is that it is a family-friendly town. And I say that about a lot of the Raleigh suburbs, but really Wake Forest truly is. Wake Forest has grown something like 300% in the last 20 years. And the planned growth is really almost to double that in the next 20 years as well. So there's a lot of infrastructure that's happened, a lot of planned development that has happened, and a lot of thought going into how to get families connected within the community, and how do you have multi-generational families? And that might be kids through grandparents, it might be just adults and their in-laws, it might be siblings and cousins or uncles. How do you get those people together within the community, and it doesn't really happen by chance. And so Wake Forest is really making an effort to plan around that, and what kind of vibe do they want. One of those things that you'll see is because of the historic downtown. Now, Southern Living, I think, rated Wake Forest as a #1 town in the country to live in for, Southern charm and its family-friendly environment. And you can see that really in things like their Friday Night on White. What is that? That is where they shut down White Street. That's the main street in Wake Forest, and have a party every Friday night from 6 to 9 p.m. Really a family-friendly party. You have free concerts and vendors and breweries, and the boutique shops on Main Street open up. And it's a great place for all people to kind of come together as a community. And it's really kind of a unique thing in the area. Now, Wake Forest was really built and continues to develop as a self-contained community. And one of the aspects where you can see that is in the medical care. So you have Duke Health Heritage is a medical system of primary care clinics in Wake Forest. You have tons of other primary care clinics outside of that system. You have Wake Med has a hospital just outside of Wake Forest in North Raleigh, probably 15 minutes from most of Wake Forest, and continuing to develop. UNC Rex is building a $500 million hospital just outside of the city, the downtown area of Wake Forest. So lots of medical care there now, and continuing to grow as that population grows. One of the things I get asked about a lot are greenways. People hear about the greenways in Cary or in Apex, and Wake Forest does have about 12 or 13 different greenways that connect the downtown to some of the communities like Holding Village and Heritage. And there are access points in those communities, which make it super accessible and pretty cool to get around in the area. It's not quite as extensive as somewhere like Cary, but there still are a lot of greenways and availability there. In addition, you have parks like Forest Ridge Park just outside of the downtown area of Wake Forest. It has a low zip line. It's very close to Falls Lake. You could walk out to Falls Lake and walk around there. There's about 30 or 40 miles of walking trails around Falls Lake, as well as many mountain biking trails, and it's a really beautiful place. Falls Lake is a fully recreational lake. There are no homes on it, so it really is a park-like atmosphere right there where you can get outside and enjoy nature and see animals, go fishing and enjoy that. Other parks that are really cool, the first one that pops up for me is East Joyner Park. It has 117 acres just outside of the downtown Wake Forest. In fact, it's really almost in downtown Wake Forest. 117-acre park, and it has a huge development plan going on well into the future. But right now it has old grove pecan tree portion to it. There are pecan trees that are well over 100 years old. They have a tobacco barn. There are sports facilities there, plenty of open space for the kids. In the future, there's going to be more lighted baseball fields, volleyball fields, pickleball, more tennis courts. So really, really interesting, very good spot to take your kids in downtown Wake Forest. The other place in Wake Forest to go to is Holding Aquatic Park. Now, Holding Aquatic Park is not the community swimming pool of the past. It is really nice. It's been recently updated. It has a 25-yard lap pool, a couple of different slides, lots of stuff to do for the family at that water park. So if you don't have a community pool in your neighborhood, or you don't belong to another, private facility, it is a great option, and it is very low cost. So it's very cheap to go and use a beautiful pool right in downtown Wake Forest. If you are looking for sports facilities, you have a lot of options around Wake Forest as well. So if you take a look at places like the Factory in Wake Forest, they have 2 hockey rinks. They've got basketball courts, indoor soccer, training facilities inside, a few different shops, baseball fields, lighted fields, and you're very close to the WRAL soccer center. That's more just inside the Raleigh line, but maybe 10, 15 minutes from most of Wake Forest, and something like 20 plus soccer fields that are very well maintained there. So lots of different options around Wake Forest for athletic facilities if that's what you're looking for. Now, a lot of people, when they think about family friendly, they think about the ability to live their life and shop and buy the things that they need. whether that's retail or groceries. So there are lots of different options for grocers around Wake Forest. One of the most popular is Wegmans. There is a large Wegmans in Wake Forest, but we also have, Aldi's, and very close by in Wakefield, Harris Teeter. So plenty of options for groceries. You've got Target and Home Depot, Lowe's, all the kind of major things that you're looking for right there in Wake Forest. There is a Costco that is planned. I can neither confirm or deny exactly when that's going to start, but it seems like it's going to start fairly soon. So very close to downtown Wake Forest as well. So I know that that's a key concern for some people, is finding a close by Costco. In terms of retail, the downtown Wake Forest has some really cool boutique shops, restaurants down there. Over the Falls is one of the more popular American restaurants, but there is almost like a tonic bar, is it more like a speakeasy downtown. You're probably not going to find super high-end fine dining around Wake Forest, but all of the family-friendly kind of staples and family. If nightlife is your thing, Wake Forest may not be really up your alley, but there are plenty of bars, plenty of breweries. We talked about Friday night on White, so kind of a block party in the summertime. So there are things to do in the evening, but it's not a place where you're gonna find many clubs and late night scenes in Wake Forest. My number 2 pro for Wake Forest is the economy. Now, the economy of Wake Forest is a little different than some of the other areas around the Triangle. Wake Forest is more of a bedroom community than it is an economic hub. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have anything going on. A lot of the people do commute to Research Triangle Park or commute down into Raleigh for their employment, or they work from home. But Wake Forest is kind of driving a lot of development in small and mid-sized businesses. They've laid something like 500 miles of fiber optic cable around the municipality of Wake Forest to kind of allow for that growth. And there are incubators kind of popping up all over, and companies like Riot Labs, and kind of growing and being in that startup scene in Wake Forest. So I would say that there is a lot of interest in Wake Forest to bring more businesses to the area and in that small to mid-sized companies. Now, you do have some economic drivers within Wake Forest as well. So there is a wireless research center that's a large nonprofit that's based there. You've got WakeMed, kind of hospital system, and soon to be the UNC Rex will have their large hospital there. You've got Southeastern Baptist Seminary, which is holding down the fort of what used to be Wake Forest University. So Wake Forest University is in Winston-Salem, and the historic buildings of Wake Forest University are actually just outside of the downtown of Wake Forest, and they are very well maintained by the Southeastern Baptist Seminary, and that contributes about $40 million to the Wake Forest economy every single year. If you are in Wake Forest at any time and you don't have a connection to Southeastern Baptist Seminary, highly recommend you just go walk the campus. It's beautiful. One key stat that I think is really interesting with Wake Forest is that the unemployment rate for Wake Forest is just over 3%. So it's very consistent with the rest of the Triangle area. And what does that mean? It means that things are well maintained. Buildings are occupied, homes are occupied. The municipality has tax revenue. So things are generally well maintained, and there's kind of this feeling of growth and progress and things that are happening because of that. The other thing I think is really cool is it also gives its residents a little bit of security. So even though Wake Forest in and of itself is more of a bedroom community where people commute in and out of, and they have this kind of small to mid-sized company startup scene that's growing. My number 3 pro for Wake Forest is proximity. Proximity is a big category, and I'm going to cover a few different things that kind of go macro down to micro. So macro, you're not actually too far from the RDU airport. It's probably 25 minutes, maybe up to 35 minutes, depending on where you're located in Wake Forest. So not too bad. What RDU airport offers you is direct flights to almost every major city in the US and almost every major city in Canada, as well as a ton of secondary cities. So you could get to places like Buffalo, New York, or Pensacola, Florida, or Manchester, New Hampshire on direct flights. So lots of access throughout North America from the RDU airport. Now, RDU airport is definitely an international airport and growing in that way. There are direct flights to London, Paris, Frankfurt, Reykjavik, Iceland, and all over the Bahamas and Bermuda, down to Panama City, Panama, Cancun, places like that. So you can definitely shrink the globe from the Raleigh area or from Wake Forest. Now, you'll hear everybody in Raleigh or in Charlotte talk about we're 2 hours from the beach and 2 hours from the mountains. And that is absolutely true. You are maybe more like 2.5 in some cases, but you can get out to the mountains in places like Brevard or Boone or Blowing Rock, Grandfather Mountain. And I'm gonna give you one tip that I love to give people. It's what I do with my family. Take a trip to the mountains when it's hot in the summer. It's about 10 degrees cooler in the mountains. And when you pack a small backpack, you go hike for a couple hours and bring a swimsuit, water shoes, and a towel. And stop and change in the woods and go swimming in one of the creeks or rivers where you find shallow pools and you can find little waterfalls to sit under. Nothing beats that on a warm day in the summer in the mountains. So you can thank me later for that tip. Or you can make it to the beach. You can get out to Topsail Island, out to the Outer Banks, a little bit further to the Outer Banks. Wilmington, you've got Wrightsville Beach and Carolina Beach, and just south of there, really cool historic town, kind of a vibe of Wake Forest, but near the ocean is Southport, becoming a very popular place to go. And places like Oak Island. So really good access out to the beach and really cool places to stay. Tons of Airbnbs is kind of the way to go out there. And then you've got some access regionally to DC, 4 hours, Charleston, 3 or 4 hours, Savannah, 4 to 5 hours, Charlotte, about 2 hours. So very easy to access those things from Wake Forest. And being on the east side of Raleigh, very easy to get out to 95 and traffic north-south out there. In addition to that, Wake Forest is very close to economic centers in Research Triangle Park and downtown Raleigh. So Research Triangle Park, we showed Highway 98, County Road goes all the way over to Durham. That shoots you out very close to Research Triangle Park, as well as come down US 1 or 401, and both of those will take you into downtown Raleigh, where both of those locations together have dozens upon dozens of Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Global 1000 businesses. So tons of access to economic hubs from Wake Forest, even though they're not based in Wake Forest. You also have proximity to lots of other shopping in places like North Hills or Crabtree Mall. So North Hills is probably a little bit higher end upscale shopping in the retail space. There are really interesting restaurants there like Cowfish, which is burgers and sushi together. You've got the Restoration Hardware. There has a large rooftop restaurant that is all encased in glass, and you can overlook all of North Hills as well as sit there at sunset and watch the sunset over North Raleigh, and it's a really cool spot. So check that out. Also in downtown Raleigh, you have an IMAX, you have Marbles Kids Museum, you have a Natural History Museum, a North Carolina History Museum. So there are plenty of kind of cultural type things to do or things to do on rainy days with your kids in downtown Raleigh. Over in Durham, there is the Museum of Natural History, the Durham Museum of Natural History. I take my kids there. We have an annual pass there. They've got dinosaur exhibits and things like that there. So very close to that. And one of the places that I really like to take my kids is Fantasy Lake Adventure Park. It is an old rock quarry that was dug out and abandoned and then filled with water, and it is crystal clear water, and they kind of have a fun park on the water. So things for you, all inflatables for your kids to jump off of or for you to jump off of. I love going there just as much as my kids do. You are also very close to lots of schools. So primary education, there are Montessori schools, public schools, charter schools, private schools. Lots and lots of different options for you in and around Wake Forest. Now, as a realtor in North Carolina, I'm not allowed to talk a whole lot about schools. I really can't tell you which schools are good and which ones aren't based on my own opinion. But there is a business that can do that for you. So School Up NC, and I can put that link in the description as well, or in the notes. School Up NC is a consultancy that you pay, but they will tell you what schools are capped, what schools have unique programs if you're looking for certain things. They can help guide you so that when you are looking for a home and you want to live relatively close to that home or that school and have easy access to it, it will help guide that home search a lot more. In addition, downtown Raleigh has NC State, Duke is in Durham, and UNC is in Chapel Hill, all within about 30-35 minutes. Those are really the key drivers for a lot of post-secondary degrees within the area. So all of the Triangle has one of the higher rates of post-secondary and master's degrees and doctoral degrees in the country. So it's a very educated population, really everywhere in the Triangle. And then of course we have smaller universities around the area as well, like Peace University or Shaw University, that contribute tremendously to the educational environment of the Triangle. So there you have it. Those are my pros for Wake Forest. Now let's dive into the cons. And I think, to be honest, some of these cons are going to turn into some pros as well. But let's jump in. So my first con for Wake Forest is price of housing. Now, the price of housing in Wake Forest, depending on where you're coming from, may be very high. It might be very affordable. But over the last 5 years, the price of homes in Wake Forest has definitely increased. And that can be a challenge for some folks. But I want to dive in and show you a few of those stats so you have a better idea of what that actually looks like. All right, so what you're looking at are some stats about the Wake Forest housing market over the last few years, and we're going to pay attention to where they're at right now. If we look at every property type, all price ranges, we are looking at an average sales price of $635,000 for single family homes, townhomes. That's everything averaged, right? A median price just going to be below that at $534,000. So if I just go to single family homes, we look at average for single family. The average single family home in Wake Forest is $705,000, which, depending again where you're coming from, may seem very affordable or may seem very expensive. So something to consider is a lot of the newer development around Wake Forest have been in kind of two different buckets. One has been kind of in that townhome space. The other is on the very high end. So, $1.5 million, $2 million type homes. So that may skew things a bit. And if we take a look, you can see that average sale price over time. If I go back to 2022, was $639,000. So now we're up to $700,000. If I go a little bit further back, you'd probably see an average sales price well in the 500s for single family homes. If I look at townhomes, we are at an average sale price of $358,000. Median is going to be just a little bit less, $349,000. What I'd like to take a look at as well is the months of supply. So that's a really key indicator of what's happening in the housing market as well. If we look at the months of supply starting out really at the beginning of this year, we were down around 2 months of inventory. So it would take 2 months of sales to clear out all the inventory if nothing else came on the market. We are up to 3.4. Now, in some of the outer lying areas of Wake Forest, you might even be a little bit higher than that, around 4 or even 5. What does that mean at around 5 to 6 months of inventory? It changes from really a seller's market to a buyer's market. So this is indicating to us that it's kind of shifting a little bit towards the buyers in the market with a little bit of leverage. That's not going to be at every price point. That's not going to be every home, but it is telling us that buyers are becoming more particular in what they want to buy, and that based on what's available in the market, they might be kind of kick around a little bit longer. So for sellers, it's really important for sellers to have their homes really well prepared, not have a lot of kind of hanging maintenance kinds of things. So yeah, this is just telling us that the market is shifting a little bit at this point. So just some basic information about the price of homes in Wake Forest. I think, again, depending on where you're coming from, the prices may seem either high or low. But the message to take away is really that there is something for everybody. There are single family homes in the low 400s in nice neighborhoods with decent schools, things like that, that are affordable and available. And there are plenty of homes at the $1.5 to $2.5 million range as well that are being created. Those are beautiful homes in great locations on large lots. But there's something for everybody in Wake Forest, even though the price range has steadily increased over the last few years. My number 2 and 3 cons for Wake Forest are really together. Two separate ideas, but really together. So we're going to talk about them together. First is you are going to need to drive if you are in Wake Forest. Now, if you live downtown Wake Forest, you might be able to walk to downtown Wake Forest and get a cup of coffee or something like that. But by and large, if you're in any of the subdivisions or any of the areas outside of that little bit of downtown, you're going to need to drive to just about everything that you need to go to. That creates a bit of a challenge with traffic at high traffic times. During the day, most days, not much of a problem. But some things to be aware of in terms of traffic. So my number 3 con is that traffic has increased quite a bit over the last couple of decades. And to be quite honest, a lot of the infrastructure to get in and out of Wake Forest hasn't really evolved quite with it, but it's coming. So I'm going to highlight for you some of the key roads in and out of Wake Forest one more time to give you a little bit of context. You probably picked this up when we looked at the map earlier, but I want to show it to you again with just talking about traffic. So 98 cuts right across Wake Forest and the very northern part of Wake County or North Raleigh. We have US 1 cuts right here next to downtown Wake Forest. And as we get closer to Raleigh, there's a lot more stoplights. North of 98, not quite as many stoplights, but south of 98, definitely a lot more stoplights. Then we've got 401 over here, where some people might come out to, and they're all kind of these two are primarily coming out to 540 or trying to get down into downtown Raleigh. 98, again, takes you over to Research Triangle Park. You could take this over to 50 and come down to 540 as well. One of the reasons why Wake Forest is that way, why there's only a handful of routes, is because of this. You have Falls Lake that kind of shoves Wake Forest over here in this corner, right? So you can't drive across the lake until you get over this way. That's what really drives a lot of this traffic, and US 1 having some stoplights. Now there's some development plans for US 1 to make it a little bit easier to get in and out of Wake Forest. I wouldn't hold my breath that those are going to happen super fast. But what we're talking about in terms of impact to you on a daily basis is really maybe another 10, 15 minutes in your commute. So we're not talking about massive amounts of time if you're trying to get to downtown Raleigh or over to Research Triangle Park. You're probably not going to be sitting in traffic for hours upon hours unless something dramatic has happened. So depending on where you're coming from and your experience with traffic, you may think it's no big deal, but it's definitely increased over time. My number 4 con for Wake Forest is weather. Now, to be quite honest, the weather in the area is actually great in my opinion, but I get asked quite a bit about summertime and what is that like? Well, to be honest with you, the heat doesn't really turn on until mid-June. Through mid-June, it's kind of like being in the north, being in the Northeast or being in the upper Midwest during the summertime. Temperatures in the upper 70s, low 80s through the middle of June. Then it picks up to maybe the upper 80s and the humidity really kicks in. So from about mid-June through early to mid-September, it does feel pretty warm, but it's really not that bad. That's when I go to the mountains or go to the lake. So I go to the mountains, it's 10 degrees cooler, go to the lake, hang out, enjoy it. It's warm. What you get with that are really nice temperatures for the rest of the year as well. So for our fall is beautiful, right? It kind of returns to that that mid 70s to mid 80s for the most of the fall until you get into like mid-October, and we have beautiful fall colors. So Raleigh is known as the city of oaks. We have a ton of pine trees, but we also have a lot of oak trees. So you get a lot of really good color in the fall, and a good time again to go back out to the mountains and check out the Blue Ridge Parkway in the fall. It's beautiful. Our winter time, very mild, is great. Now, I'm from Minnesota, and I moved here with some incredible snow shovels. Steel core, can't find them anywhere here in North Carolina. It snows about 2, maybe 3 times a winter, a couple inches up to maybe 6 inches at a time. I have never shoveled in North Carolina, and I've lived here for nearly 20 years because in about 2 or 3 days, all of it melts. So I don't really see the need to shovel. Enjoy it when it does snow, those few times, because it's gonna go away. And the world kind of shuts down because we don't have the equipment to plow all the roads during that time. It's still not like you can't get groceries, the world doesn't completely shut down, but kids are out off of school, lots of people sledding, enjoy the hot cocoa, that kind of thing. The majority of our winter, our high temperatures are in the upper 40s to mid 50s, with low temperatures somewhere in that upper teens to upper 20s, low 30s range, in the middle of the night. So during the day, as soon as the sun comes up, you're right there going from 30 to 50 degrees like that. Still really nice to go take a walk, enjoy the day, and not have to feel like your winter is dragging on and on and on. So I actually really like the winter because of that. Our springtime is beautiful temperatures, much like the fall. The only difference is, we don't have the fall colors, we have all the bloom. But what does the bloom bring? It brings a lot of pollen. And the number one kind of complaint in the spring is our pine pollen. Because we have a lot of pine trees, there will be yellow on everything. It'll be on your car, it'll be on your house, it's on the sidewalk, it's on everything that's left outside, so your patio furniture. And it's kind of annoying, but it will go away, and come early May, you can wash it all off and go about your business. So you get 4 great seasons in Raleigh, in Wake Forest, in North Carolina. And one of the reasons that I actually really like it, it's just a few different little cons to be aware of. My number 5 con for Wake Forest and for the entire area are animals. I actually love animals. I actually really enjoy being outside and seeing deer, and my kids and I, we hunt frogs, we go fishing, but a couple of them that you need to be aware of. The first one is deer. The deer are great, but they're everywhere, and they'll eat just about anything. So my tip for you is, if you plan extensive landscaping, maybe test it out a little bit with a couple of plants that are considered deer resistant first, to make sure that the deer aren't gonna eat everything and you just didn't make a very expensive salad bar like this guy did. The other animals that I really get asked about, or people are concerned about, is snakes. So we do have snakes in North Carolina. The number one snake that people are concerned about is copperheads. Copperheads are not an aggressive snake, they are venomous. I've probably seen 10 copper snakes in 20 years being here, and I have never felt like they were going to strike me. I always saw them from afar. Maybe that's because I'm just paying attention when I kind of should. Some things to pay attention to avoid them. One is during those shoulder seasons, when it's cooler at night and warm during the day, those snakes may come out and want to be on roadways, greenways, rocks, driveways, places where there may be a little bit more heat left over from the day where they can continue to get warm. So in those low light hours, wear a headlamp, bring a flashlight, and you won't really have a problem with them. Or during the summertime, high, knee-high grass, those kinds of things are just kind of places that I try to avoid in the warmer months, and you should be okay. Pay attention to that for your dogs as well, because that's really the people or the things that get bitten are dogs. I guess they're not people, but dogs get bitten way more than humans because they're curious and they stick their nose where they shouldn't be. So just pay attention to your dogs during those seasons or wherever they're at, So the other animal that is becoming more prevalent are coyotes. So I don't see them all that often, probably a couple times a year I see a coyote, but they do come into some of the areas. The only concern for those are, small animals really. So if you have cats, if you have chickens, if you have maybe bunny rabbits or something like that, they may get a little bit more curious about your property, but they're not really much of a nuisance to humans in my experience. So I haven't really run into any issues with them, nor have I heard of any significant issues with them, but they are neat animals. Pay attention to them. That wraps up my 5 cons. And as you can tell, a lot of my cons are actually pros about the area. Some pretty interesting things, some pretty nice things about Wake Forest. And keep in mind, I have lived in the area for nearly 20 years, and I help people just like you transition to the area nearly every single day. So whether you're moving in 9 days or in 9 months, you should take my contact information out of the description below. You can call, text, email, set up a Zoom, and we can talk about what a smooth transition to the area looks like for you. Check you next time.